Welcome to another episode of Pakistani American YouTube channel's podcast. Today we are going to introduce you to a very talented guy. His name is Tanweer Ansari. What is he doing these days?
He's a vice president of compliance in a local bank.
Senior Vice President of
Senior
Compliance
Vice
at a local bank. Yeah, very smart guy, and it was a pleasure talking to him. So we're going to have him on our podcast today.
Let's find out from him how he merged law with banking.
Okay, very good. Yeah. So, folks, let's move on and talk to Tanweer Ansari. I don't think he's related to Aziz Ansari, but let's check that out. Are you in any way related to Aziz Ansari, Tanweer?
I'm sure we're all related in some way or another. 6 degrees, right? 6
Yes,
degrees.
6 degrees of separation.
Yeah, yep.
Absolutely. So we want to ask a few questions. He is a very smart and a highly professional guy, and we thought that he should be on our podcast because, as we all know, we try to create this podcast to bring Pakistani American community members who are working in the mainstream American society and bringing our country's and our community's name forward. So, Rosina, you want to ask Tanweer some questions? Sure.
Tanweer, let's talk about your background and where were you born and raised?
Absolutely. I did want to thank you because I'm very humbled by the opportunity to speak to your audience.
It's our pleasure to have you on our
Right,
podcast.
definitely.
We are very privileged to have you here.
I think it's very important to reach out to the young people in the community, especially, our Daisy Pakistani minority youth in New York, because a lot of people need mentors and they need proper guidance so that they can succeed and know that all the avenues of success that are out there. So I like to mentor young people a lot. So let me tell you answer your question about my background. So I came to the U.S. when I was 3 years old.
Okay.
My parents were first-generation immigrants. They came from Pakistan. My father is a pharmacist, and my mom, at that time, was a housewife. I came here nearly in 1977, but my father came here probably 3 years before.
Okay.
Right around the time I was born. So he left my mom and my siblings and I in Pakistan, and he came to America first. And he brought us over about 3 years later. I think we came here on my third birthday. I kind of remember that story.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
cutting a cake by the Statue of Liberty. So that's kind of like etched in my memory. So we've been here nearly 40 years in the U.S. I will have to take this time to definitely, talk about my parents for a little bit because they are my background, they are my current, and they are my future. Because without your parents, you're nothing. And I have to say, I get my work ethic and my kind of like my family life, love of family, and that kind of connection from my parents because they instilled those values in me and my siblings. So my parents, they came to the country, like I said, and they basically worked right from the get-go. My dad worked, he's a pharmacist. He worked at that time, very difficult to get really good paying jobs, even for pharmacists. There was a lot of discrimination. When we came, there were very few Pakistani and Daisy folks, and it was a very small, tight-knit community.
Yeah, definitely. 40 years ago, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember there was no food stores. There was just like one, probably near us. And so everybody was very close and friendly, and everybody stuck together. And so they worked like multiple jobs. My mom, my dad, my mom has worked in, I can say like, she started at a tie factory in Manhattan and worked for the commissioner at the Department of Health after going to night school. And then she worked at, Pakistan's Zindabad TV. She worked at the airport for Alitalia. She's had several careers. She worked for the Department of Education as a teaching assistant, and she's now retired. And
she worked hard.
She worked very hard.
Right.
My dad, again, he worked. He didn't really work in retail pharmacies that much, but he worked at New York Presbyterian and Long Island Jewish Medical Center in the pharmacy world, and he worked at times 3 to 4 jobs just to get us ahead. And now he's finally resting.
I was going to ask you, you're a lawyer, so was this something that you wanted to become at a childhood? Because I know so many kids, they grow up dreaming about a profession. So was that you, or was the family who kind of inspired you to become a lawyer? So tell us a little bit about where you got your inspiration.
It was in college, actually, because in all through high school, I was involved in science and mathematical and engineering type of things. I got into medical school, Sophie Davis program. I got into engineering school. I got into law school, and business school. So I've completed 2 of those. In high
Wait
school,
a second. So you did business and you
law.
did business and law both.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but in high school, I was very science and medicine oriented. But when I went away to college, I went to a small liberal arts college in upstate New York. It was called Union College. And I can say it was a great experience. I made lifelong friends there, but you really got to explore what you liked, explore your interests. I took all sorts of different types of studies between the arts, philosophy, English, literature. My major ended up being English and political science with a minor in fine arts.
Okay.
So I had a very diverse major and minor, and once I was there, that's when I fell in love with the law. I felt like with the law, everybody thinks a lawyer knows everything, that they have the answer. It's almost like a very omniscient job. Like people could give you a God complex because they always come and ask you legal questions, or you know the answer. I will say quite often I don't know the answer, but I know the legalities of a situation, and I can certainly turn that to my advantage. So law, I fell in love with in college, and then I decided to go to law school in college.
So did you practice as a lawyer, or?
Well, there's different kinds of lawyers. There's many different fields. So what I did was, I was already, after college, I was kind of in the banking industry.
So how did you start as a banker?
Well, after college, one of the easier jobs to get is a bank teller position.
Yes.
And when I finished college, I kind of started as a bank teller, and I worked my way up in the retail section of banking, and that means being in the branches. I worked as a teller, worked my way up to team leader, to assistant branch manager, to branch manager. And while I was doing this, I was kind of going to law school at the same time, part-time at night at Hofstra University. And one thing I have to comment about, when I was working a long time ago at Commerce Bank, and that's kind of like a very famous bank at that time, because
Is this the big bank that was at every corner in New York City?
yeah, they were bought out by TD Bank eventually, but the chairman was Vernon Hill, and they call it Burger King banking because they were open 7 days a week. I had a branch open till midnight. I had they were open all the time from 7 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. So it was all about convenience for the customer. But I managed a store, they call them stores, in Times Square. And I made a lot of lifelong friendships there, and I learned a lot in retail banking.
Oh, okay.
Because you learn operations, you learn how to manage people, you learn how to manage young people, old people, all kinds of people from different backgrounds. So my time in banking started at that point. And when I went to law school, I completed that after I was at Commerce Bank. And once I completed, I decided to get a job in compliance, because there's a part of law that is
Yeah, that was my next question. How did you merge law with banking? So that's where compliance comes in.
Yeah, that's where it came in, because I at one point had worked at another bank before I went to TD or Commerce, and at that bank I was also in the branches, but then I had left to go to law school and worked at this other bank, and then once that was completed, because I had maintained good relations with them, I had seen that there was a compliance officer position open over there, and a JD, which is a law degree, is very much commonplace. I wouldn't say commonplace, but it's a good asset to have to go into a compliance officer role.
Right.
And so when I interviewed for that position, they gave me the job right away. But because I knew the people there, I knew the CEO, the COO, Chief Operating Officer, Chief Executive Officer. They knew me and my background, and what basically I had asked them was that could you, if if I get hired, could I have the general counsel role at some point? And
So the general counsel is the lawyer for
it's
the
a
bank.
lawyer for the bank as an entity.
Okay.
So they advise the bank on operational issues. You do contract reviews. You do regulatory reviews. So that's that's the aspect of law that I specialize in. Right now, I'm senior vice president of compliance, Bank Secrecy Act, as well as Community Reinvestment Act at a local bank. So compliance, deals with all the different regulations, and we make sure that the bank is following all the, there's I would say at least 20 or 30 big regulations. You always hear about mortgage, the mortgage world and lending and protections for consumers in banking. So we deal with all that to make sure the bank is following those rules and we can pass the government examinations that the bank has to undergo. Additionally, there's something called the Bank Secrecy Act. I'm the Bank Secrecy Act officer for the bank. And
So what's Bank Secrecy Act? Just tell us a little bit.
It sounds very intriguing, right? Bank secrecy. So it's really a tool that the government has where the banks, they really monitor what's going on in all the accounts that are housed in the bank. Basically, we usually have computer algorithms and software that kind of monitors all the different types of transactions. Anything that happens out of order, like if you do large cash transactions, if you do large wires, the locations where you're sending your money, if you're going from different location to location. It's also, we try to prevent fraud on accounts, so you're not the victim of fraud, but it's mainly also to make sure that you're not perpetrating fraud and engaging in illicit activities. So it could be anywhere from human trafficking to narcotics trafficking, drug money. Then there's terrorist financing. That's always a hot button topic, and that falls under the BSA, Bank Secrecy Act, or Patriot Act. So we're monitoring all those different, transactions. And we have to report certain things to the government.
Okay.
Then the other part of my job is the Community Reinvestment Act officer, which is also very interesting. Basically, if you take deposits of customers in your area, you also have to invest money back into those same people. So for example, if we're located here in Queens, our bank, and we take your deposits in Queens, we can't go typically lend that money out to Los Angeles.
Right.
You should be reinvesting back in your community. So there's a lending component to that, there's an investment component to that, and there's also a fair lending component in terms of not discriminating against minorities, but also there's a service component. So I get involved in a lot of financial literacy for kids. I do classes for kids. I get involved in some of the political figures.
So Tanweer, tell me, are you after money launderers, and can you publicly talk about any case which you uncovered recently or back in?
Well, I can't because the whole thing with the money laundering is that any case that arose from it, there's confidentiality requirements. So I can't talk about it, but I can talk about the kind of cases that I would have seen or people would typically see. So in my experience, I have seen in the past, identity theft rings, people where they would steal your identity and file taxes in your name and earn income credit, get money under your name and have it direct deposited elsewhere, or stealing people's social security numbers from Puerto Rico or some other places. A lot of different locations, people who are unbeknownst to what's going on, and then you kind of take over their identity and either, like I said, filing as an IRS scam, or you're just, raiding their bank accounts using their identity. There's cell phone rings, there's auto theft rings too. Because what happens with money laundering, and there's also the political aspect too, right? So just think about some of the political scandals that you've heard about. That, like Eliot Spitzer, for example, that's a famous case. That happened from a bank filing what's known as a suspicious activity report. Those reports are confidential. Nobody really nobody's supposed to know that a bank is filing them on you, but it's part of the law. We're required to file certain reports with the government, and that's how also one of the chief things with the money laundering is that people want to, and it's called money laundering because you're washing money, making dirty money into clean money. So that's their main objective. The criminals, they want to just take dirty money, put it into, even if they take a loss on it, if they have $15,000 or $50,000 in dirty money, and they can convert it into somehow $10,000 in legitimate money, they don't mind taking the loss because it's more dirty money where that came from, and now they have $10,000 in clean money and legitimate money, and nobody can question that.
So that's great. You obviously have a great background in these legal issues surrounding the banking industry. We are really pleased to hear you have such a strong educational professional background. So besides your profession, what other issues are important to you, and do you think that someone like you who has such a good educational professional background should be involved in other community activities and do things for the public?
Sure. Once you're able to do something, and people will argue that everybody's able to do something, but I think that there's a lot of people saddled with responsibilities out there when they're young. Once you're established and you're able to do something, you should definitely give back to your community because everybody needs guidance. I think I was mentioning that earlier. Somebody, and everybody needs a rabbi, right? A mentor, a rabbi. Right. And there were rabbis and mentors along the way for me, people who stuck their neck out and showed me the way and what I should be focusing on, open doors. So, I can say right now, I just helped a friend, a brother of a friend, a good friend of mine, who just said, "Hey, Tanweer, could you help? You have a lot of connections. Help my brother get a job in your field." And I said, "I'll keep my eyes open, but these things don't happen very easily, and it doesn't happen based on just me snapping a finger." But I was able to get that person a job where he doubled the salary and broke into the compliance field. And so it's very important to be a mentor to our kids and give them career guidance, educational guidance, to some I don't want to say religious guidance, but spiritual guidance.
Yes.
Because you have to be at peace with, your creator and what you believe in.
So are you involved in any community organizations at this point?
Well, I'm involved in a lot of community organizations. A lot of them are professional, but I can say that, like, in terms of the Muslim MPAC, which is a political action committee, I'm involved with a Muslim PAC, and we kind of look for those issues. I'm involved with South Asian Bar Association.
Right.
I'm involved with Muslim, it's called Mubani, Muslim Bar Association of New York.
Okay.
Where I'm also involved, like I said, with the community school board.
Right.
My son, I started out being part of the school leadership team in my son's school, and I wanted to be actively involved in helping shape his education. But at some point, I was very interested in it, and I think that they liked me, like the school team, and they encouraged me to run for an office called a Community Education Council office. So I am on the Community Education Council for District 26 as of now, and we get involved with all the schools in the district and parts of Flushing, Bayside, Belrose, not Floral Park, but Belrose, Glen Oaks. So it's one of the best in the country, actually.
Right.
One of the most highest scoring in New York City, definitely. So I'm on that council, and I work with kids there. I work with different schools and help promote education and curriculum needs and help with budgeting. So I'm involved in that. I do a lot of financial literacy for kids. I think I may have mentioned that earlier. I love to work with kids. Even before I had my own kids, and I have three.
Beautiful.
Yeah, three beautiful kids.
Yeah, three beautiful kids, and we had a little conversation with them. So we're going to add that in our video. They are very smart. One of your older son, Sean, actually helped me fix some of my camera issues. So he's brilliant. Before we finish this really interesting conversation, so what are your dreams for the near future? Where do you see yourself, let's say like 5 years to 10 years? And perhaps at the end you want to give a message to our viewers, especially the American Pakistani youth.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that, because you've given me this podium to kind of speak to the community at large, and I appreciate that. So there's a couple of things I want to say. Number one, get out of your comfort zone. Don't just be comfortable in what you're doing. Push yourself and try to do different things. Get involved with different activities, different educational things, and don't take it for granted that, I can't do it. I'm not good at that. Well, you're good at whatever you put your mind to, whatever you try your best at.
Exactly.
And success has 1,000 fathers, and failure is always an orphan.
Okay.
And that really means basically
Success has 1,000 fathers, and
failure is always an orphan.
Yes.
So basically, that's basically saying that people always look to the negative, where nobody wants to take credit when you don't do well. When you do well, everybody's trying to take credit for that. So I want to push people to, even though it's not popular, get yourself out of your comfort zone and try, because that's the only way you're really going to be successful in your dreams. We believe to respect our,
and equal rights.
Respect our women.
So me and her are another example of equal rights. She's equally
So you
responsible
guys are
for
co-hosting
this part.
everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a wonderful wife, and he's a wonderful husband.
And
Very
then
strong
for the
guy.
men out there, don't hold back your women. Give them the support.
Right.
We were talking earlier off camera, basically about now she's going to, now that the kids are in school full time, she's going to go kickstart her career in accounting, and inshallah she'll be very successful. And I'm here to give her the support that she gave me in the last 12 years of our marriage. Where do I see myself in 10 years or 5-10 years? I see myself being an executive vice president, maybe chief operating officer for the bank. Inshallah. Additionally, I continue to, see myself supporting my kids in their educational endeavors.
Right.
Continuing to travel. We love to travel, whether it's Europe or even if it's local, as long as you're having enjoyment, you're learning, and you keep your mind open to different things.
Exploring.
It's just, definitely one of the things that you should be doing, travel and meet people. Don't just become complacent. So that's where I see myself in that time frame. Down the road even further, I see myself after I retire consulting, you know. And that's what most people in my field do. I will say this, I do see myself potentially throwing my hat into politics. So, yeah.
So you have some political aspirations.
I do.
Okay, so what would be your focus if you want to talk about that?
It would be local.
Local
and the focus would be just getting representation for our community.
Okay.
Quite often.
South Asian community?
South Asian community, in the Queens district that I live in right now, it's heavily populated with Pakistani, Indian, Bengali, West Indian, folks. But I don't know that we get the representation that we necessarily need.
Right.
It's certainly, more of our people have to speak out, more of our people have to be vocal, because you can't count on the next person to really represent you if they haven't walked a mile in your shoes.
Right.
Nobody really knows your experience. And I think that our community is going through that growing pains right now. We see a lot of anti-Muslim, hate crimes and violence and all the rhetoric right now going on. But I think that's a natural part of being accepted also.
Okay.
Because
there's the growing pains?
like every other community before us, whether it was Jews, whether it was blacks, whether it was Italian, Irish, Chinese, all these communities face similar, trials.
Right.
So I think that, I'm certainly not happy about that, that there's all this rhetoric, then negative rhetoric, but, we will overcome,
Yes.
it's part of
Martin
becoming
Luther King said,
integrated into the
we
society.
shall overcome.
Yeah.
So you want to keep your eyes on the prize, and hopefully soon there is light at the end of the tunnel. and very positive thinking, very positive message. It was a pleasure talking to you, Tanweer.
Beautiful conversation, inspirational.
Thank
Very
you.
beautiful.
I really appreciate it. I
Wish
appreciate the opportunity.
we could spend some more time, but our time is limited here. So maybe another time we will talk to you again and check on your progress.
Thank you, Tanweer.
Thank you so much. I did want to give a shout out to my wife Iram, Sean, Hassan, Eva, my kids, and my parents, Nishad and Rashid. Thank you.